From 2008 to 2017, I proudly served as an officer in the Marine Corps. My second tour took me to the heart of Afghanistan, stationed in the southern province of Helmand. Our days were filled with mounted patrols, a routine that involved our entire platoon cramming into what we affectionately dubbed MPPs, short for mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles. These beasts of trucks were our lifeline, designed to withstand the deadliest of explosions. However, the Taliban's ingenuity knew no bounds. They quickly adapted, crafting larger and deadlier improvised explosive devices, IEDs, to counter our fortified vehicles. For those unfamiliar with military movies, IEDs were the bane of our existence, the go-to weapon in our enemy's arsenal across both Iraq and Afghanistan. But it wasn't just about making bigger bombs. The Taliban's bomb makers faced constraints, limited resources that forced them to play a dangerous game. Sure, they could pool their explosives into one massive blast, but that meant leaving other areas vulnerable along our patrol routes. Enter our secret weapon, the Kid. Despite his nickname, he was anything but juvenile. With a demeanor that belied his age, he became the linchpin of our operations. While the Taliban sought to outsmart us with hidden traps, our Kid had an uncanny knack for sniffing out danger where others couldn't. It was a constant game of cat and mouse, each side trying to outwit the other. Yet amidst the chaos and uncertainty, our platoon found strength in the resilience of our comrades and the unwavering determination to protect one another, no matter the odds. He stood there, not towering over anyone, and from a distance, you might mistake him for a teenager. But as you got closer, those patchy facial hairs and the lines around his eyes told a different story. He had to be older, way older than his youthful appearance suggested. We joked that either he had the hardest paper out in history or he was simply ageless. We couldn't pin down his age. It was like trying to catch smoke in your hands. After much debate and some light-hearted betting, we settled on somewhere between 18 and 34. But when we finally mustered the courage to ask him, his response floored us. He didn't know his birthday. He only knew he was born during Ramadan, likely after the Soviets had left. It sounded wild to us, but in Afghanistan, not knowing your birthday isn't all that uncommon. They celebrate other things with such gusto that a birthday can seem trivial. Our first encounter with him was about a week into our tour. He was tending to the fields near his family's compound, and as we rumbled down the dirt track, he approached us, his gaze fixed and unwavering. I made the call to halt the convoy, a strategic move more than anything. We were still in the business of winning hearts and minds, and making a friendly introduction seemed like a step in the right direction. Now, I'll admit I was on edge. Dismounting from a stationary convoy is like painting a target on your back for any would-be ambushers, but seeing how comfortable the Kid was approaching us, I figured the area was clear of any Taliban threat. So I stepped forward, offering my warmest "Salam alaikum" before our translator took over the conversation. I quickly introduced ourselves, outlining our mission and how long we'd be in the area. I emphasized that if he or his family needed assistance, they could visit our outpost during daylight hours, but without anything resembling a weapon to avoid any misunderstandings. Throughout our conversation, he maintained a steely gaze, almost as if he found me utterly contemptible. When I extended my hand for a shake, he offered his left, a serious insult in many Eastern cultures. It harks back to old customs where one hand was reserved for eating and the other for, well, other things. By offering his left hand, he was essentially calling me garbage, but I wasn't about to take offense. Instead, I chuckled and insisted on a handshake, fully aware of the implied insult. Surprisingly, my response seemed to intrigue him. His expression shifted, caught between awe and apprehension. Assuring him that all was forgiven, I extended an olive branch in the form of powdered Gatorade. He recognized it immediately, and although he didn't crack a smile, accepting it felt like progress. With that, we resumed our patrol. Our next encounter with the Kid was a bit more heartwarming. One of our sentries spotted him approaching our outpost, clutching, what appeared to be a toddler. Through our translator, we learned that the child was suffering from a stomach ache. Our corpsman whipped up a concoction of Gatorade and crushed Moyne, and soon enough, the little one was feeling better. With grateful nods, they departed, leaving behind a reminder of the humanity that often bridges the divide between us. That little incident marked a significant shift in our rapport with the kid and his family. Within a matter of weeks, he became our clandestine asset. Every time our convoy neared his compound, he'd be there waiting, his keen ears picking up the rumble of our engines long before we arrived. As we approached, he'd greet us with a warm salam, followed by a cryptic warning in Pashto. The area of Wazir Kale is very busy today. Do not go there. It didn't take us long to decipher his message. We knew he was alerting us to the presence of enemy IEDs. For 36 consecutive days, we navigated our routes without encountering a single IED. It drove the Taliban to the brink of madness. We'd overhear their frantic chatter on the radio, speculating whether drones were surveilling their every move. Frustrated, they resorted to small arms fire and RPG ambushes, but we were ready. We met their attacks head-on, dealing them heavy losses during that period. Then came the day we turned onto the familiar track that cut through the kids' fields. Ahead of us lay something foreign, an anomaly on our patrol route. We halted the convoy, preparing to dismount and inspect the area for explosives. As the commanding officer, I directed the forward MRAP to assess the object. I can still recall the tension in the air, the stifling heat inside the vehicle, and the taste of sweat on my lips. It's etched into my memory. When the Lance Corporal's voice crackled over the radio, his words sent a chill down my spine. It's the kid. I'd been clear we were dealing with an object on the track, not a person. Yet, when I asked the forward vehicle commander to confirm, his response chilled me to the bone. It's the kid, he reiterated. It's his head. The Taliban had somehow sniffed out that the kid was the source of our intelligence. With their network of informants spread across the local population, it was only a matter of time before they pieced it together. What baffles me is how they singled him out. We had cultivated relationships with numerous villagers during our patrols, and by the end of our tour, we were on good terms with many village elders. Anyone could have been leaking intel to us, so how did they hone in on the kid? It's a question that gnaws at me, fueling my guilt. But here's the part that makes me sound like a heartless jerk. It's not the kid's death that weighs on me the most. It's the knowledge that without his intel, countless soldiers under my command would have perished during that tour. In a twisted, messed up way, I view him as acceptable collateral damage. I despise myself for thinking that way, but it's a truth I can't shake. You can call it a coping mechanism or chalk it up to the residual effects of PTSD. It just is what it is. The soldier in me finds solace in the notion that he died serving a greater purpose, but deep down I wish the remnants of my humanity could accept it too. Before we move on to the next story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar? If so, please share your experience in the comments section. I read all your comments and try to reply to everyone. Additionally, I will feature some of your experiences in my next videos. This mystical story, which still makes my blood run cold, was told to me by a tank veteran at one of the World War II veterans meetings. Here's his story. I was then a mechanic driver on a Sherman tank in the 2nd Armored Division, Hell on Wheels. We were stationed in a remote corner. The terrain around was exceptionally beautiful. The uplands were picturesque. Everything was green, and there was the most beautiful forest, just like in German fairy tales. Then there was a respite. We had been standing there for a couple of days without seeing any Germans nearby, so we relaxed a bit. However, the story is such that even vigilance would not have helped. I was sitting in the grass, going through the tools for some minor maintenance. The others were dozing on the other side of the tank. The nearest vehicles were also not moving. The sun was shining. It was warm, quiet, and blissful as if there was no war. And then my old mate Bob Hawkins, the mechanic driver of another Sherman from our company, came up to me. I recognized him at once by all the signs. Bob, his face, his jacket, even the trophy German dagger with a black handle hanging on his belt as always, and a holster in the German manner on the left and in front, hooked on. And he says to me, "Get up, Jim, let's go." I got up without thinking and followed him without asking a single question. I'm walking, shuffling my feet. We're walking somewhere. Walking. I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly felt a little freer, as if I was freed from this stupid obedience, not peculiar to me in general. I stopped and asked, "Bobby, where are we going?" And then you won't believe it. Just when I asked that, Bob was gone. He disappeared, vanished into thin air. Just now he was here, walking in front of me like a madman. And he melted right before my eyes. And I'm standing in the river, almost up to my neck in the water. I felt a little creepy. I climbed ashore and shivered. I don't know whether it was from the cold or from fear. This ghost, who had taken the form of my mate Bobby, wanted to drown me. I was in such a trance while we were walking that I didn't even realize I was in the river. I know it wasn't a dream. Bob was just walking in front of me, leading me somewhere. And he couldn't have hidden, couldn't have run away, didn't drown, didn't dive into the river. He was out of sight in a flash, as if a switch had been flipped, and there was no Bob. I'm standing there, knees shaking, looking around. Damn it. There they are, our Shermans far below, about 4 kilometers from where I'm standing, and I'm high up on a mountain above the valley with the river beside me. I'm standing all alone, not a living soul around. I broke out in a cold sweat, and at that moment, I was afraid not so much of the strangeness of Bobby's sudden disappearance as of the fact that my absence would be noticed. In the language of the regulations, and this language is a strict one, such things are called unauthorized abandonment of the unit and are punished to the full extent of wartime laws. They will take you into custody, and then you must prove that you had no malicious intentions. As I ran with all my might back to the location, a column of dust behind me. I don't know what the running records were then, but I'm sure I broke them all, no matter how many there were. I ran to the tanks, and everything remained as it was. No fuss, nobody noticed my absence. My mate Bob Hawkins was sitting at the next Sherman, eating a piece of bread and stew. He liked a good meal. I didn't say anything to him, of course. What's he got to do with it? It was clear that it wasn't Bob who had led me away from the tanks and into the river, but some entity that pretended to be Hawkins. What am I supposed to do? Kick him in the teeth because some entity turned out to look like him? I've heard about this kind of thing from the old-timers back in Wyoming. Never happened to anyone in my memory. I never thought it would happen to me. Not at home, not in Wyoming, but on German soil. The old men used to say that in such cases you should pray, but if you ask, where are we going? Without a second thought, it disappears in no time. That's what they said. Nothing like that ever happened to me again. But for a long time, I still flinched when I was called to go somewhere, looking closely at the person and the environment. Sometimes because of this, there were some embarrassments, but it is not interesting anymore. If you find these stories chilling, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more gripping tales. Share your story in the comments below. I love to hear your experiences. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.